إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. So we've been doing this section regarding the Iman in the Day of Judgment, and over the last several lectures we've gone through all of the different stages of the Day of Judgment, from the time of death, when the angels they approach the individual, the questioning in the grave, the trial of the grave, the punishment and the blessings of the grave, the resurrection, the balance, the bridge, all of the various aspects of what occurs on the Day of Judgment. And we have now this one final section left, and that is regarding paradise and hellfire, and a few important points regarding our belief in the paradise and the hellfire. There are two main points that we wish to look at regarding paradise and hellfire. The first point is the fact that they have already been created and they already exist. The second, that they will continue to always exist, that they will not come to an end. Those are the two main points, that they have already been created and they already exist, and secondly, that they will continue to exist, they will not come to an end. So the first point first, regarding the fact that they've already been created and they already exist. اتفق المسلمون عامة أن الجنة والنار مخلوقتان موجودتان الآن. If you look into books like Al-Aqeedah of Imām al-Tahawi, or the explanations of that, then you will find that it mentions how the Muslims as a whole, on the whole, are agreed upon the fact that paradise and hell are already created and that they already exist now. وخالف في ذلك المعتزلة وزعموا أنهما لم تخلقا بعد. But some of the people of innovation, they opposed Ahlul Sunnah in that. And they said that the paradise and the hellfire are not created yet. And they are the Mu'tazilah. The Mu'tazilah, they claim that paradise and hell are not yet created. So they opposed the Muslims on the whole, who agreed that paradise and hell are already created and already exist right now. وَزَعَمُوا أَنَّ خَلْقَهُمَا يَكُونُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. And the Mu'tazilah, this group of deviation and innovation, they claimed that paradise and hell will be created on the Day of Judgment. They said paradise and hell is going to be created on the Day of Judgment at the end, that they are not created and already there right now. And the reason why they said that, their logic, لأن خلقهما الآن عندهم من العبث لعدم وجود من يسكنهما الآن. According to them and their logic, they said paradise and hell already being in existence right now is useless. Why would they already be created right now, they said, when there is nobody in them yet? That was their logic. That was their thinking. Why would paradise and hell be created and already there now when there's nobody in them yet? They are going to go in after the Day of Judgment. So they said paradise and hell isn't there yet. They are going to be created on the Day of Judgment. But Ahlul Sunnah, we say, ليس هذا عبثا بل هناك حكما عظيمة. We say this logic of theirs is incorrect, and it is not useless for the paradise and the hellfire to be in existence already. That is incorrect to make such a claim. There are great wisdoms behind paradise and hell already being there now. Minha, from them, أن الله لم يزل يزيد في نعيم الجنة. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues to increase the blessings of paradise. The blessings of paradise are continuously being expanded and increased. وَكَذَلِكَ النَّارِ, and the same with the hellfire. يَزِيدُ اللَّهُ فِيهَا مِنْ أَصْنَافِ الْعَذَابِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increases it with all types of punishment. بِالْإِضَافَةِ. So that is one thing. They are already in existence, they are already created, and Allah continues to add to them and increase the blessings in paradise and increase the types of punishment in hellfire. That is ongoing. And secondly, أن أرواح المؤمنين تنعم في الجنة وأرواح الكفار تعذب في النار. That the souls of the believers, they are given blessings in paradise right now. We mentioned as part of the section regarding the blessings of the grave that some of the believers, their souls are in birds that fly in paradise as part of the blessings of the grave. So the souls of the believers, of some of the believers, they are in blessing in paradise right now, and the souls of the disbelievers are in punishment in the fire as a part of the punishment and the blessings of the grave. On top of all of that, أمر آخر أن العبرة بالأدلة الشرعية. That the point, the basis is always back to the legislative evidences. It is not about your logic and what you think, but it's always about what the evidences indicate. وليست بالخيالات العقلية المخالفة لها. And so it is never based upon your intellect and your logic and what you think is the correct case, which actually opposes the evidences. وَالْأَدِلَّةُ الشَّرْعِيَّةُ بِفَضْلِ اللَّهِ كَثِيرًا. And so in this case, the Islamic evidences that indicate that paradise and hell are already created and they already exist are many. There are many evidences that clearly highlight paradise and hellfire are already created and in existence. From the examples of those evidences, قوله تعالى في شأن الجنة, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said regarding paradise, أُعِدَّتْ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ, it has been prepared for the pious. وَقَالَ فِي شَأْنِ النَّارِ, and Allah said about the hellfire, أُعِدَّتْ لِلْكَافِرِينَ, it has been prepared for the disbelievers. In these ayat, you see that the verbs being used are past tense. أُعِدَّتْ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ, أُعِدَّتْ لِلْكَافِرِينَ, that paradise has already been created for the pious, and hellfire has already been created for the disbelievers, indicating that their creation is something that already occurred in the past. Secondly, another evidence indicating that paradise and hellfire are already created, في قصة الإسراء والمعراج, in the story of الإسراء والمعراج. فقد قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم ثم أدخلت الجنة فإذا فيها جنابذ اللؤلؤ وإذا ترابها المسك. The Prophet ﷺ mentioned regarding the night of Al-Isra wal-Mi'raj, when he was taken up to the heavens, ثُمَّ أُدْخِلْتُ الْجَنَّةِ, then I was taken into paradise. The messenger was taken into paradise on that night of Al-Isra wal-Mi'raj. And he mentioned some of the descriptions of the affairs that he saw in the paradise on that night when he was taken in. This therefore indicates the paradise is already created and already exists. وَرَأَى, and on that same night, رَأَى أَهْلَ النَّارِ وَذَكَرَ أَنَّ أَكْثَرَهُمُ النِّسَاءِ. It's mentioned in the hadith how the messenger saw the people of the fire and that the majority of them were women. وَرَأَى الزُّنَاهِ وَالزَّوَانِي يَعَذَّبُونَ بِالنَّارِ مِثْلَ التَّنُّورِ وَهَذَا مَشْهُورٌ مَعْلُومٌ. And the hadith where it highlights he saw the fornicators being punished. All of that indicating the hellfire already exists. Then also, from the evidences highlighting that paradise and hellfire have already been created and already exist, أحاديث عرض الجنة والنار على المؤمن والكافر في القبر. The narrations that highlight that paradise and hellfire are shown to the people in their graves. That paradise and hellfire are shown to the people in their graves. فالمؤمن يفتح له باب من الجنة. So the believer, a door to paradise is opened up to him in his grave. فَيَأْتِيهِ مِنْ رَوْحِهَا وَطِيبِهَا. And so the beauty, the fragrance of paradise comes through to him in his grave. وَقَدْ تَقَدَّمَ وَالْكَافِرُ يُفْتَحُ لَهُ بَابٌ مِّنَ النَّارِ فَيَأْتِيهِ مِنْ حَرِّهَا وَسُمُومِهَا. And the disbeliever, a door to hellfire is opened up in his grave, and so the evil smells and heat, they come through to his grave. This all indicates paradise and hell are already there and they already exist. That the people in their graves, as part of their blessings or punishment, are shown either the paradise or the hellfire. Also, another evidence, another hadith which highlights that the hellfire and paradise already exist is the hadith of Abu Hurraira radiyallahu anhu, when he said that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, لما خلق الله الجنة, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created paradise, قال يا جبريل اذهب فانظر إليها. He said to Jibreel, Allah said to Jibreel, when He created paradise, go and look at it. Said to Jibreel, go and look at it. فذهب فنظر, so he went and looked into it. فقال يا ربي وعزتك لا يسمع بها أحد إلا دخلها. That when Allah created paradise, Allah said to Jibreel, go and look into it. Jibreel went and looked into it and said, by your might and your power, no one who hears of this, or there is no one who will hear of this except that he enters it. That they will all desire entry into this paradise. So this again indicates that it's already been created, that Allah already created it, and Jibreel alayhi salam was told to go and look at that paradise. So these are several examples and evidences highlighting that paradise and hellfire have already been created and they already exist. The second issue was whether paradise and hellfire eventually come to an end, or will they remain forever? Do they eventually come to an end, or do they remain forever? That is the second issue here now. اتفق أهل السنة والجماعة على أن الجنة والنار باقيتان لا تفنيان. أهل السنة والجماعة, they are agreed that paradise and hellfire, they remain. They will always remain, and they do not come to an end. They are not finished one day. They remain and continue. قال شيخ الإسلام ابن تيمية رحمه الله, شيخ الإسلام ابن تيمية رحمه الله تعالى said, وقد اتفق سلف الأمة وأئمتها وسائر أهل السنة والجماعة على أن من المخلوقات ما لا يعدم ولا يفنى بالكلية كالجنة والنار والعرش وغير ذلك. Ibn Taymiyyah said in Majmu' al-Fatawa, volume 18, page 307, that the Salaf of this Ummah and the Imams and the Muslims of Ahlul Sunnah as a whole, they are agreed that there are certain things in creation that do not come to an end. There are certain things in creation that do not come to an end. From them, like the paradise and the hellfire and the throne of Allah, and other than that. These are from the affairs that do never, or they never come to an end completely, and they are never finished off completely. The fire, paradise, the throne of Allah, there are certain affairs of that nature. And Ibn Taymiyyah also said, وَقَالَ أَهْلُ الْإِسْلَامِ جَمِيعًا لَيْسَ لِلْجَنَّةِ وَالنَّارِ آخِرٍ. That Ahlul Sunnah, or the people of Islam, the Muslims, they all said that paradise and hell do not have an end. وَأَنَّهُمَا لَا تَزَالَانِ بَاقِيَتَيْنِ. And that they will remain. They will always remain. They will not cease to exist. وَكَذَلِكَ أَهْلُ الْجَنَّةِ لَا يَزَالُونَ فِي الْجَنَّةِ يَتَنَعَّمُونَ وَأَهْلُ النَّارِ فِي النَّارِ يُعَذَّبُونَ لَيْسَ لِذَلِكَ آخِرٌ. And that the people of paradise will always remain in there upon their blessing, and the people of the fire, the inhabitants of the fire, will always be in the hellfire, being punished, and it will not come to an end. وقد خالف الجهمية الحق في هذا الباب فقالوا بفنائهما. The Jahmiyyah, another one of the groups of deviation, they claimed that actually the hellfire and paradise do come to an end. That eventually they come to an end and they are finished and they no longer exist after that. That is the statement of the Jahmiyyah, which is of course false. وَأَمَّا أَدِلَّةُ بَقَائِهِمَا فَكَثِيرًا. So what are the evidences that paradise and hell will continue to remain and they do not come to an end? There are many. الأدلة التي فيها تأكيد الخلود في الجنة بالتأبيد. One of the categories of the evidences is the fact that there are many ayat that tell us how the inhabitants of paradise will remain in that blessing forever. There are ayat that highlight to us how they will remain in there forever. قال تعالى, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, هذا يوم ينفع الصادقين صدقهم لهم جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها أبدا. At the end of Al-Ma'idah, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions to us لهم جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار. Those righteous believers, for them are the gardens under which rivers flow. خالدين فيها أبدا. And they will remain therein forever. Abadan, forever. Indicating that paradise will not come to an end. They will remain in that blessing forever. Another example, إن الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات أولئك هم خير البرية جزاؤهم عند ربهم جنات عدن تجري من تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها أبدا. Again there in Surah Al-Bayyinah, خالدين فيها أبدا. that they will remain therein forever. Again indicating therefore that it will not come to an end. In Surah Sad, Ayah 54, إِنَّ هَذَا لَرِزْقُنَا مَا لَهُ مِن نَفَادٍ. Indeed, this is our provision, and it does not have any end. It does not run out. مَا لَهُ مِن نَفَادٍ. It does not have any end. It will not run out. وقال وجنات لهم فيها نعيم مقيم خالدين فيها أبدا. Surah At-Tawbah. خالدين فيها أبدا. Again, that they will be therein forever. وفي الصحيحين من حديث ذبح الموت. And there is a hadith in Al-Bukhari and Muslim that talks about how on the day of judgment death will come in the form of a ram, and that it will be sacrificed, slaughtered, and so there will be no more death after that. It mentions in the in the hadith, يا أهل الجنة خلود فلا موت وَيَا أَهْلَ النَّارِ خُلُودٌ فَلَا مَوْتٌ. O people of paradise, remain forever without death. There is no death now. And people of paradise, inhabitants of paradise, remain forever. There is no death. That is after, on that day, death is brought in the form of a ram that is sacrificed, and so there is no more death after that. And they are told, the people of paradise, the people of hell, khulud, forever, remain forever, fala maut, because there is no death now. So that is clear in highlighting that paradise and hell remain and they do not come to an end. Secondly, all of those evidences so far were about paradise. Now, secondly, the evidence is about specifically hellfire. الأدلة التي فيها تأكيد الخلود في النار بالتأبيد. So the evidences that indicate the inhabitants of the fire will remain therein forever. قال تعالى إن الذين كفروا وظلموا لم يكن الله ليغفر لهم ولا ليهديهم طريقا إلا طريق جهنم خالدين فيها أبدا. That those who disbelieved and wronged, then Allah will not forgive them nor guide them to the right path except to the path of hellfire. They will be taken to the path of hellfire. And خالدين فيها أبدا. That they will remain therein forever. Surah An-Nisa. Also, إن الله لعن الكافرين وأعد لهم سعيرا خالدين فيها أبدا. Once again, Allah here mentioning the disbelievers and how Allah has cursed them and that He has prepared for them that hellfire. خالدين فيها أبدا. That they will remain therein forever. In Surah Al-Jinn, وَمَنْ يَعْصِ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ فَإِنَّ لَهُ نَارَ جَهَنَّمَ خَالِدِينَ فِيهَا أَبَدًا. That those who disobey Allah and His Messenger, then for them is the fire of Jahannam, and they will remain therein forever. Abadan, forever. In another ayah, Surah Al-Ma'idah again. يريدون أن يخرجوا من النار وما هم بخارجين منها ولهم عذاب مقيم. That they desire to exit from the fire, but they will not exit from it. And they have that ongoing punishment. So there are two evidences in that ayah. One, it says that they desire to exit. وَمَا هُمْ بِخَارِجِينَ مِنْهَا. But they will not exit from it. They cannot exit from it. Indicating that it carries on forever. They are never going to get out of it. And secondly, لَهُمْ عَذَابٌ مُقِيمٌ. They have a constant, ongoing punishment. Again indicating there is no end to it. More evidences in Surah Al-Zukhruf. وَنَادَوْا يَا مَالِكْ لِيَقْضِ عَلَيْنَا رَبُّكَ قَالَ إِنَّكُمْ مَاكِثُونَ. When they call out to Malik, the gatekeeper of hell, the angel, and they say to him, let your Lord just kill us, just finish us off. But he says to them, إِنَّكُمْ مَاكِثُونَ. That you are staying there. There is no death. You are not going to be finished off. You are مَاكِثُونَ, meaning you're staying there. This again indicates that it is continuous. And also that previous hadith about how death on that day will be brought forth in the shape of a ram and it will be sacrificed and then it will be said, no more death. There is no more death after that. So the inhabitants of hellfire, there is no death and they continue in their existence there. There is an issue to mention here. ذهب بعض المتأخرين من أهل السنة إلى بقاء الجنة وفناء النار. There are some statements you may hear that some of the people of Sunnah, that they said paradise will carry on forever, but hellfire comes to an end eventually. كذا ذكر ابن أبي العز ونسبه إلى جماعة من السلف والخلف. Ibn Abi al-Izz mentioned this opinion or this statement and attributed it to some of the scholars that paradise carries on forever but hellfire eventually comes to an end. وقد روي هذا عن بعض الصحابة ولم يصح عن أحد منهم. There are some narrations from some of the companions that they said that paradise will continue but hellfire will eventually come to an end. However, none of those narrations are authentic. It is claimed that there are narrations from the companions, but what appears to be the case is that none of those narrations are actually authentic. واستدلوا بأدلة أشهرها ثلاثة. Of course, they have some evidences that they based their opinion upon, that the hellfire will eventually come to an end, but paradise will carry on. The evidences they used, just as an example, some of the evidences they used, قول الله تعالى فأما الذين شقوا ففي النار لهم فيها زفير وشهيق خالدين فيها ما دامت السماوات والأرض إلا ما شاء ربك إن ربك فعال لما يريد. In this ayah or these ayat, they say that Allah tells us about the inhabitants of the hellfire that they are khalidina fiha. They are going to remain there in the hellfire. ما دامت السماوات والأرض إلا ما شاء ربك. This is the point. They say Allah says they will remain therein, and then afterwards, except to what Allah wills. Now, why is there an exception being mentioned? They said the exception is being mentioned to indicate that perhaps they will not remain forever, and maybe Allah will for that punishment to come to an end at some time. They say that's why the exception is there in the ayah. Why would the exception be there otherwise, except what Allah wills? If it's going to be forever and constant, then no need to say whatever Allah wills or whatever Allah will in this affair. They said the fact that Allah made this exception in the ayah indicates that there's a possibility of this exception coming real, and that perhaps the people of hellfire, they will have the punishment stopped at some point. However, that evidence and that understanding is weak. Their understanding of the ayah like that interpretation is weak. Because when it says, إِلَّا مَا شَاءَ رَبُّكَ, except for what your Lord wills, استثناء في أهل الكبائر من الموحدين فإنهم شقوا شقاوة مؤقتة. The scholars, they said the exception is referring to something specific. It is referring to the believers who end up in the hellfire because of major sins they committed. Those believers who end up in the hellfire because of major sins they committed, etc., do they stay there forever or do they eventually come out? They eventually come out. The scholar said this ayah is in reference to them. They will eventually come out. So for them, the fire will eventually end. They'll come out. But the others, the disbelievers, they remain forever. So that's how the scholars explained that this ayah is not talking about how Allah may will for all of the inhabitants of hellfire to stop, the punishment to stop. Rather, this is in reference to the believers from the people of Tawheed who ended up in the hellfire because of their sins, that they are then removed, and so for them the punishment stops and it's not forever, but for the disbelievers it continues forever. Also, the scholars, they said that this ayah, إِلَّا مَا شَاءَ رَبُّكَ, except for what your Lord wills, is very general and very open. It's not specific to the hellfire and that the punishment will stop. It's not about that specifically. It's a very open ayah. Whatever your Lord wills. It could be in reference to different things. It could be in reference to different affairs. It's only an assumption that it's in reference to the hellfire. So it's a very general and open evidence. Whereas the evidences that talk about hellfire continuing forever are very specific about the hellfire. So again, they are stronger than this. The second evidence they use is very similar to the first. The ayah in Al-An'am, خالدين فيها إلا ما شاء الله إن ربك حكيم عليم. That they will remain therein except for what Allah wills. They said again, there you go. Allah's telling us there's an exception. Maybe Allah wills for the punishment to stop eventually. They are there in the fire forever except what Allah wills. But again, we say the same as the first point. That is a very general statement, a very general ayah. It's not specific to Allah willing for the hellfire to come to an end. And the other evidences are very specific that the hellfire does not come to an end. Thirdly, the evidence they used to say that the hellfire may come to an end, the ayah in An-Naba, لَابِثِينَ فِيهَا أَحْقَابًا. أحقاب لابثين فيها أحقابا. Ahqab is the plural of حقب or حقب, and it is المدة الطويلة وقدرها بعضهم ب80 أو 100 سنة. Ahqab is the plural of حقب or حقب, and it means a long period of time. Some of the scholars, they said it refers to 80 years, an 80-year period. Some of them said it refers to a 100-year period. And so they said here in the ayah, it says لَابِثِينَ فِيهَا أَحْقَابًا, that they will remain therein for these periods of huqb. And every huqb is 80 or 100 years. That they'll remain in there for a number of these periods of time. And because the word is nakira, it's indefinite in the ayah, that would indicate that all of these 100-year periods or 80-year periods eventually stop, because it's a nakira. It's an indefinite word in the Arabic language, and so that's what it can mean. However, the response to that is that if you look at the full ayah, it clarifies things. لابثين, or the full section, لابثين فيها أحقابا لا يذوقون فيها بردا ولا شرابا إلا حميما وغساقا. It then goes on to mention how they will not taste anything cool or have anything to drink, and that they will only have the hamim and the ghassaq of the heat and the other affairs. So this indicates they will stay in there for long periods where they have nothing cold and no drink. فإذا انتهت هذه المدد أتاهم نوع آخر وصنف جديد من العذاب وهكذا. So these periods of time that are being mentioned, they are specific to this punishment. That they will not have anything cool or cold, they will not have any drink for these ahqab, for these periods of 100 years at a time or 80 years at a time. And then when those periods come to an end, that means this particular punishment comes to an end and a new punishment begins. It doesn't mean their time in hellfire comes to an end. It means this particular punishment may come to an end after the ahqab, because the ahqab are connected to this punishment. So they said it's a specific meaning. Yes, ahqab, it means they may come to an end. But what will come to an end? Not their existence in the hellfire, but this punishment of not having anything cool and cold and not having any liquid. Then after that, when this finishes, these ahqab finish, they'll get a new punishment for more ahqab. So this is not an evidence that they come to an end, the punishment comes to an end. It's only an evidence that the particular punishment comes to an end and more other punishment begins thereafter. And in any case, again, it's a very general evidence. Ahqab indicating periods of time. It's again very general and it is not specific. هناك مسلك هو أفضل ما يكون في الرد على القائلين بفناء النار، وهو مسلك الصبر والتقسيم، وقد سلكه الشيخ محمد الأمين الشنقيطي وحاصل كلامه. The Shaykh, or here in this section it mentions that there is a good way to understand this issue and to clarify to those who claim that the hellfire will come to an end, the ones who say paradise will continue but the hellfire will come to an end eventually. There's a good way to explain the issue to them. Explain to them as Shaykh Muhammad al-Amin al-Shanqiti, one of the great famous scholars who passed away now, said, أن المقام لا يخلو من إحدى 5 حالات بالتقسيم الصحيح وغيرها راجع إليها. That with regards to the hellfire, there are 5 circumstances that are possible. With regards to the hellfire, there are 5 circumstances that are possible. الأولى أن النار تفنى وأهلها يستريحون من عذابها. The first possibility that the fire eventually comes to an end and the inhabitants thereafter find relaxation. That the hellfire eventually comes to an end and so the inhabitants are free from punishment. The second possibility, that the hellfire continues forever, but the people, the inhabitants of it, eventually die. Second possibility. Third possibility, the hellfire continues forever, but the inhabitants of it eventually get out. The fourth possibility, the hellfire continues forever, but the inhabitants have their punishment lightened eventually. And the fifth possibility, that the hellfire continues forever and the inhabitants remain therein forever. 5 possibilities here. The hellfire comes to an end and the people, the inhabitants, can then relax. Or the hellfire continues but the inhabitants die. Or the hellfire continues but the inhabitants get out. Or the hellfire continues but the inhabitants have their punishment reduced. Or the hellfire continues and the inhabitants maintain, or they are maintained within it and they continue to remain within it. As for the first possibility, that the hellfire comes to an end and the people can then relax, is that possibility possible? Impossible. The first possibility, that the hellfire comes to an end and the inhabitants can then relax, impossible. One ayah that proves that, كُلَّمَا نَضِجَتْ جُلُودُهُمْ بَدَّلْنَاهُمْ جُلُودًا غَيْرَهَا لِيَذُوقُوا الْعَذَابَ. Allah mentioned every time their skins are burnt off, we change them with new skins so they can be punished again. So there is no such possibility of them ever being able to relax. So the first possibility is gone. The second possibility was, okay, maybe the fire will continue but the people will die in the end. That is refuted in the Quran. The inhabitants do not die. لا يقضى عليهم فيموتوا. They will not be dealt with so that they die. That will not happen. Allah tells us in the Quran. So that possibility is not a possibility. That the fire will remain but the people will die. That's not possible. Third possibility was, maybe the fire remains then but the people manage to get out eventually. Again, that possibility is not a possibility, because again in the Quran it mentions وَمَا هُمْ بِخَارِجِينَ مِنَ النَّارِ, that they are not going to exit from the fire. And كُلَّمَا أَرَادُوا أَنْ يَخْرُجُوا مِنْهَا أُعِيدُوا فِيهَا. Every time they want to get out, they are pushed back in there again. So that third one isn't a possibility, that the fire will continue but they'll somehow, the inhabitants will get out. That is not possible. The fourth possibility was, maybe the fire will continue but the punishment will be lightened. Again, this does not occur. In the Quran it mentions فَذُوقُوا فَلَن نَزِيدَكُمْ إِلَّا عَذَابًا. Taste the punishment and we will not increase you in anything other than more torment. So the punishment doesn't go down, it goes up. And لا يقضى عليهم فيموتوا ولا يخفف عنهم من عذابها. That the punishment will not be lightened upon them. So that is refuted. That possibility is not a possibility. That the fire will continue but maybe the punishment will be lightened. Therefore the only possibility that remains is the fire will continue and the people will continue to be punished. The inhabitants will continue to be punished. Therefore, this statement is not the correct one, that paradise will carry on but hellfire will come to an end. The correct statement is, paradise continues, hellfire continues, and they do not come to an end. But there are some who say that even Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn al-Qayyim had this opinion, that the hellfire will come to an end. Firstly, Imām Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ليس عنده أو عنه كلمة واحدة فيها القول بأن النار تفنى. There is no clear speech from Shaykh al-Islam clearly indicating or saying that the hellfire will come to an end. بل إن الأقوال الصريحة له أن النار لا تفنى بل نقل عليه الإجماع. Rather, what is clear cut from the speech of Ibn Taymiyyah is that the hellfire will not come to an end. As for claiming that Ibn Taymiyyah said the hellfire will come to an end, it's only ambiguous statements. There's nothing clear from Ibn Taymiyyah ever where he said the hellfire will come to an end. What is clear in his statements, in his works, is that the hellfire will not come to an end. And Ibn Taymiyyah even said there's consensus upon that the hellfire will not come to an end. طُبِعَتْ لَهُ, and there is even a book printed regarding this for Ibn Taymiyyah, where the evidences are mentioned for those who claim that the hellfire will come to an end. But in that book, Ibn Taymiyyah doesn't actually give a conclusion. It's not like he says, my opinion is the hellfire will come to an end. It is simply a book highlighting those opinions. And on top of that, it is not even proven that this particular book is actually written by Ibn Taymiyyah in the first place. Secondly, Al-Imam Ibn al-Qayyim. Did he say that the hellfire will come to an end? There are different things that can be noted by examining the positions of Ibn al-Qayyim. It could be noted, or it could be understood. It could be understood from some of his speech that he seems to lean to the idea that hellfire will come to an end. In Shifa al-Alil and As-Sawa'iq al-Mursala and Hadi al-Arwah, there is speech from Ibn al-Qayyim that could possibly indicate that maybe he leans to the idea that the hellfire comes to an end. But then there is also speech from Ibn al-Qayyim that highlights he does not take a position on this, that he is mutawaqqif, doesn't take a position on that. And thirdly, at-tafsil. There is some clarification and explanation regarding Ibn al-Qayyim. وهذا ما سلكه في أوائل كتابه الوابل الصيب فإنه ذهب إلى أن نار العصاة تفنى وأن نار الكفار لا تفنى. That there is a possibility, what he meant was that the believers, the righteous who went in there because of their sins, they eventually come out. So that section of the fire is therefore eventually going to become vacant, because the believers who were in there for their sins and their major sins, eventually they all come out. That section of the fire comes to an end. But the overall section for the disbelievers does not come to an end. That could be understood from Ibn al-Qayyim, from some of his writings and some of his books. And even that, in the end, when you look at Ibn al-Qayyim, what is understood clearly is his position that the hellfire does not come to an end. So that is the Aqeedah of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah. The hellfire and paradise are already created and they already exist, and that they will not come to an end, and the inhabitants of paradise will remain forever, and the inhabitants of hellfire will remain forever. That brings us to the end of the section from Al-Aqeedah Al-Wasitiyyah regarding the belief in the Day of Judgment. So next week we'll carry on from that next section